Hello everyone, and welcome to another very important chess game by Paul Morphy. And in this chess game, Paul Morphy is playing with the black pieces, and his opponent is Johann Jakob Loewenthal. And this game was played in 1858 in London. So this game is especially, significantly an important chess game of Paul Morphy, because this game was one of the rare chess games of Paul Morphy when he played seriously. So in here, Paul Morphy is facing Loewenthal for becoming the best player in the England. And Paul Morphy, first of all, went to the England with the steamship Africa. First, Paul Morphy arrived in Liverpool on June 20 in 1858. And when he arrived in Birmingham, Paul Morphy met with Thomas Avery, the president of the Birmingham Chess Club. Paul Morphy spent the night in Birmingham and proceeded to London. As the chess champion of the United States, Paul Morphy was there to represent his country and to play with Howard Stanton, the famous chess champion. But unfortunately, Stanton was delaying the match with Paul Morphy, and he was not willing to play against Paul Morphy face-to-face. So instead of playing Paul Morphy face-to-face, he played a correspondence game against Paul Morphy. But there are also many other players who has competed in that game, so they have never played face-to-face. That's why Paul Morphy realized that he was never going to play with Howard Stanton. And he played the strongest players in the England, first of all, as the chess champion of the United States. When he was in the Europe, he first went to England. That's an important note. So Paul Morphy played some very important and the strong masters at that time, the strongest players of the England, like Thomas Wilson Barnes and John Owen, and Paul Morphy, beaten all of them. He crushed his opponents, but they say he was tired and sick when he was playing with Thomas Wilson Barnes. So after Paul Morphy managed to defeat every strong and dominant players in the England, there was one more player left who needs to play with Paul Morphy, and that player was Johann Jakob Loewenthal, the old rival of Paul Morphy when Paul Morphy was only 13 years old. They played a chess game. Well, they actually played 3 games, and Loewenthal only managed to draw for 1 time and lost the rest. Paul Morphy won 2 times and defeated Loewenthal. Well, that was a very interesting event. So Paul Morphy was only 13 years old. And now Loewenthal is here for retaliation. He needs to defeat Paul Morphy in order to get back his reputation, and also for proving that he is better than Paul Morphy. So the Loewenthal match is the first obstacle for Paul Morphy to become the unofficial world chess champion. So that Howard Stanton was inactive at that time. He was not competing, and he was doing some other stuff like translation and things like that. And he was an old man now at that time, and Stanton was not competing. So the leading player at that time was Adolf Anderssen, and Anderssen was waiting Paul Morphy. But before facing Anderssen, first of all, Paul Morphy needs to defeat Loewenthal, and then, only then, he will have the chance to meet with Anderssen. And after Loewenthal, his second strong opponent is going to be Harwitz. And anyway, I told you that Paul Morphy met with Thomas Avery in Birmingham. He was the president of the Birmingham Chess Club, and Thomas Avery gave us a description of his brief encounter with Paul Morphy, and that description is a very interesting one. It shows the stereotypes of the 19th century gentleman. Well, I'm going to show you that description at the end of the game. So at that time, of course, chess is a war game, is a game of battle. Chess is a game of the generals and the kings. Thomas Avery was expecting someone, more manly, with big shoulders, with a beard, tall, and a masculine man. But Paul Morphy was the opposite. Well, he was a small man. Paul Morphy had no beard, and he had an almost childish face. So Loewenthal match was important, and Paul Morphy is here to play series of matches against Loewenthal. The winner was to be the first player to score 9 wins. So anyone who scores the 9th win will be victorious. And the stakes were set at £100. The winner will get £100. So sorry for this long introduction, but this game is significantly an important chess game for the history of Paul Morphy and chess. So this is round 1, game 1, and the date is July 19 in 1858, London. So as I told you before, Loewenthal has the white pieces, and he starts the game with playing e4, e5, knight to f3, d6, the Philidor's defense, d4, e takes on d4, knight takes on d4. This is the exchange variation of the Philidor's defense. Knight to f6, knight to c3, bishop to e7, bishop to e2, and both players castled. c5, attacking the knight. Knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop to f4, bishop to e6, queen to d2, d5, e takes on d5, knight takes on d5, rook from a to d1, and Loewenthal is threatening to win a piece. Knight takes knight, bishop takes knight, queen takes bishop, queen takes queen, rook takes queen, winning a piece. So Paul Morphy played knight takes on f4, queen takes on f4, attacking the queen with the rook. Moving away, queen to a5 by Paul Morphy. Bishop to d3, rook from a to d8, knight to g5. Attacking on h7, bishop takes knight, removing the threat. Queen takes on g5, h6, queen to h4, knight to d4, a3, and Paul Morphy played rook from f to e8. Rook from f to e1, fighting for the open file. Queen to b6, attacking the pawn on b2. Knight to a4, defending and attacking the queen. Queen to a5, knight to c3, defending the knight. f5, rook to e5, and Loewenthal wants to double the rooks. But Paul Morphy is not allowing that. He played bishop to f7, rook from d to e1, and queen to b6. Rook takes on e8, rook takes rook, and both players are exchanging the rooks. But here comes queen to e7, attacking the bishop. Paul Morphy played bishop to f7, knight to a4, attacking the queen, queen to a5, and knight takes on c5. And in this position, Loewenthal is a pawn up. Well, Paul Morphy calmly played queen to d2, f3, and knight to c6, attacking the queen, queen to e2 by Loewenthal, and Johann Jakob Loewenthal wants to exchange the queens. So if exchanging the queens, he will enjoy this game. He will enjoy the end game. So he has the one extra pawn. That's why Paul Morphy is not exchanging anything. He played queen to c1, check king to f2, and queen takes on b2, getting back the pawn. Bishop takes on f5, but queen takes on a3, queen to b5, defending the knight, queen to c3, knight to b3, queen to f6, and Loewenthal captures on b7. And once again, Loewenthal has the one extra pawn. Well, Paul Morphy played g6, attacking the bishop. If queen takes on f5, then queen takes on c6. So we have g6, queen to c8, that's check, king to h7, and then saving the bishop. Bishop to d3, knight to e5, knight to d2, queen to h4, that's check. And Loewenthal probably thought deeply and hard, and then he played king to f1. Well, this position is interesting because if king to g1, then queen to d4, that's check. And let's say king to f1, then knight takes on d3, c takes on d3, queen takes pawn, that's check. It doesn't look good for white. After queen to d4, if king to h1, then this is a disaster for white. Knight takes on d3, and white can't even capture back. he has to play h3. If c takes on d3, queen to a1, and white is getting checkmated. So we have king to f1, a wise choice by Loewenthal. Queen takes on h2 and Paul Morphy is getting back the pawn. And the odds are even, materially is equal now. Knight to e4 by Loewenthal. Queen to h1 by Paul Morphy. King to f2. Queen to c1. Queen to c3. Queen to f4. King to e2. Getting away from this nasty pin. h5. Knight to f2. h4. Queen to d2. Queen to g3. Queen to e3. a5. Paul Morphy's pawns are looking more active and better placed. But still, it looks like this game is a draw. Queen to e4, bishop to e6, f4, attacking the knight, knight takes bishop, c takes on d3, and the attack continues. Loewenthal is attacking the bishop. Bishop to g4 check, king to f1, bishop to f5, attacking the queen. Well, Loewenthal played a move, and the game ended in a draw. He played queen to e7. After queen to e7 move by Loewenthal, both gentlemen agreed to a draw. So the possible continuation is a draw by repetition. So for example, if king to g8, queen to e8, and white can check the king forever, queen to f8, king to h7. Well, before forgetting, after queen to f8, king to h5 is not the most brilliant move in the world of all times, because there is queen to h8, checkmate. That's why black has to play king to h7, queen to e7, and white can check the king forever and make no progress. So like almost 10 years ago, when Loewenthal met with Paul Morphy, when Paul Morphy was only 13 years old, the first game was a draw. And again, deja vu, the first game is draw by repetition. But of course Loewenthal lost the last two games 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago. And again, Loewenthal managed to draw with Paul Morphy, and the first player who gets 9 wins will win this series of matches. But this was a draw. So I see you guys next time in the game 2 against Loewenthal with Paul Morphy, which was played in 1858. So I hope you have enjoyed watching this video, and I hope to see you next time. Take care, and bye bye for now.